Come back, everybody. This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you on the program today. Our special guest is B.D. Salerno, author of the book Forensic by the Stars, Astrology Investigates. B.D., welcome to the program. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me, Rick.
You've been studying, as I mentioned, astrology for over 20 years, focusing on forensic astrology. Let's talk about that because that's a fairly new term to people that don't follow astrology real closely. What are we talking about with forensic astrology?
Well, actually, I'm going to back up a little bit and explain to the listeners that there are many branches of astrology that serve various purposes. The one we're particularly referring to is event astrology, where an event happens, such as there's a train wreck or there's a signing into law of a new bill, the time of any important event, and you can construct a horoscope and it will describe that event and the surrounding circumstances of that event. So astrologers have been doing that for many, many years. There's a chart for the signing of the Constitution of the United States. There's a chart for the Declaration of World War II, etc. But a lot of people have done this before me, but nobody's really written extensively about it, is if you can also do an event chart for a tragic event or a crisis like a crime or a murder. And it will describe the circumstances of that situation as it would anything else that you would cast a chart for. And I first discovered that when I was studying a branch of astrology which is called horary. And that is basically, horary means hour, and it is a form of astrology used for hundreds and hundreds of years that its purpose is to answer questions. You can actually answer questions with astrology. And I was studying that, and because that's based on the time that a question is asked, I was like, well, if I can get an answer to a question, I can get an answer to an event that happened that we don't have all the details about just yet, or that which are not yet apparent. So I started reading in some of the books I read where astrologers actually had done charts for famous crimes. Now, for many years, I've been a crime buff. I've read all, Anne Rule's books and all the crime writers. I just seem to be attracted to things that are mysterious, things that you want to know more about.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, these were conclusions or outcomes that really didn't make a whole lot of sense to most of the public. And to you, it's like, that just doesn't ring true to me.
Yeah, that happened with a lot of my early charts. And when I was studying the horary astrology, and I found out, there were some astrologers that were writing about famous crimes, and they were figuring out who did them. In particular, one astrologer wrote a book that influenced me tremendously called The Astrologer Looks at Murder. She wrote it around 1964, and her name was Barbara Waters. Of course, being a true crime buff and an amateur sleuth and all that, I was like, oh, I had to read that book. And I read it, and I was fascinated by the technique she was describing. So Barbara Waters took the event chart, which is the horoscope cast for a specific place and time, for one of the Jack the Ripper murders in London back in 1888. And she actually developed a profile of the killer, and it matched one of the prime suspects. Of course, we still don't know who did all that, but there's still a lot of, there's a good handful of prime suspects for those murders, and possibly more than one individual. So I saw that, and I was just blown away. I thought, I really need to study this because it kind of married two of my biggest hobbies, which were true crime and astrology. At the time, I had a roommate who was a history major, and she was doing a paper on the Charles Lindbergh Jr. kidnapping, which took place in New Jersey, not far from where I live. I grew up, and I'm living in New Jersey right now. And so, of course, that case was very well known to the locals and in New Jersey history. They still have trials, reenactments of the trial at the Flemington County Courthouse to this day of that trial. And at that trial, a German immigrant, Bruno Hauptmann, was convicted and, of course, unfortunately sent to the electric chair for the kidnapping and murder. And there's been a lot of controversy over the years. Did he really do this? Because the work seemed to be, it had to involve more than one person. And he was so adamant about not being involved, and nobody believed his alibi, and nobody would come forward except his wife. And, of course, her testimony was discounted completely because they figured she was just trying to protect him. So my very first forensic horoscope was of the Lindbergh kidnapping. I had to do some research to get all the information I needed. But when I did that horoscope, I was completely blown away by my findings, and I was just committed to doing this kind of work. I just felt like there's something to this that is so important and needs more study. So that's actually the discussion of that crime is in the introduction to my book, Forensics by the Stars.
And it's fascinating as you read that. The book is Forensic by the Stars. The website is forensicbythestars.com. When you go about doing something like that, and that's something that we've all read and vaguely remember about the Lindbergh baby situation, what date do you use? I would assume there's so many different dates that you could choose in there. How do you go about finding a date? And then you talked before about the charts will describe and tell you things. How does that happen? What all goes into the equation?
Well, actually, what a chart really is you can visualize a horoscope as it looks like a pie chart. It's got 12 sections to it, and those sections are the 12 houses of experience. Everything that happens to us in life belongs to one of these houses of experience. For example, there's a house that rules your children. It also rules your creativity because it's creation. A child is a creation. And another house rules your marriage partner, your business partner. It also rules the perpetrator that commits a crime. These houses have literally hundreds of meanings. So when you are making a horoscope, you are taking a specific date and a specific time, like 11:35 a.m. in Kansas City, Missouri. If something happened then, you would do it for that time. And what is represented on that in the pie chart, so to speak, the horoscope, are the positions of planets, the sun and moon, and various stars. And they form certain geometric patterns within that which have meaning throughout the centuries from antiquity. These meanings were studied and assigned. And each planet and star just represents particular energies. They have so many meanings. But, for example, the moon rules the home. The moon can rule the mother. It can rule the feminine, can rule women. The moon can rule the passage of an event. It rules fertility in a chart if you're looking to see if someone wants to have a child. And on and on. Mercury rules communications, which we would understand because we sort of associate Mercury with something fast.
Right.
And with a message.
Come back, everybody.